Okay, so I've gotten emails from a couple of you saying that you were having some difficulties remembering some of the things that we went over in class. Um, so I'm going to record this video here and sort of go over some of the tools and some of the tools and skills that we went over in class. And hopefully this will help you as a review, and for Kayla this might be a way for you to learn some of the things that you missed on the day you were out. um, I'm also going to suggest from here on out that when we're going through lessons, take some notes. I know that we got a lot that we cover in class each day, but take some notes. I'll try from now on to pause a little bit longer uh, between between tools that we go over, between the different steps. I'll try to pause a little bit longer, let you write down some notes. But that way, when you're trying to remember later on, you won't have to struggle with that. You'll have the stuff written down there right in front of you. But anyway, so let me remember that I asked you to download. If you haven't, let's pull that up real quick. Remember that I asked you to download the images that were on the blog. Not all these, of course, but on this, images for class on August 30th. You should have done that by now. Kayla, if you haven't, go ahead and download those, just so that you've got so we all have the same images. And by the way, I fixed this image, so if anybody wants to download that one that you didn't get a chance to, you ought to be able to see it now. I fixed that problem. Alright, so you see we've got all these different images, and I asked you to download them onto your computer. So I'm going to open up my folder. Remember, you should have this folder, computer art. You should have assignment 1. You should have all these different folders. In my downloaded images is where I put all those things. I'm going to open up the image that I want to be my background for the collage that I'm going to put together. So I can now that I've got GIMP, now that I have downloaded GIMP onto my computer, I can right click, and as you can see, it gives me a menu where one of the items that I can choose is edit with GIMP. It's one of the nice simple things. Your computer is smart enough to know that you've got GIMP. So we're going to click on that, open up our background image. Okay, and let's move this over. Remember, the conversation that we had in class is that GIMP is essentially a very close clone of Photoshop, and a lot of these buttons over here on the right side here, or I'm sorry, on the left side here, the icons match almost perfectly with their Photoshop counterparts, but they have different names. And so we'll learn both the names of these tools on GIMP, but we'll also refer to some of them as their Photoshop names. That way, when you go on from here, if you ever have the opportunity to use Photoshop for something, you'll know what the tools are called, and you can say that you have Photoshop skills, no problem. All right, so I want to cut and paste something onto this background. So I need to pull up an image. I'm going to begin with this rocket ship here, which is the first thing that we did in class as well. Click on Edit with GIMP. That opens this. Alright, so just like in class, we're going to begin with what GIMP calls the Free Select tool. The Free Select tool is what in Photoshop is called the Lasso tool. So I will more than likely just call it the Lasso tool from here on out. The Lasso tool allows me to draw a section. Well, let's float over it for a moment. You see it says select a hand-drawn region with free and polygonal segments. Essentially, it's going to allow me to draw a shape onto my image, and then that portion of the image will be selected. As you see right now, there's a dotted line that goes around this entire image. That means that this entire image is selected right now. So if I were to go to edit and copy or cut, it's going to take that entire image. If I just wanted to take a selection, a small area of that image, then I'm going to make sure that I draw some sort of a selection around this whole thing. Right? So I'm going to mention, like I did in class, that one thing that can be done is I can just click my mouse and hold it and try my darndest, though I'm not very good at it when I'm dealing with a touchpad like is on my laptop here. If you have a mouse, maybe you'll be better at this. I am when I have a mouse, but I don't have that luxury right now. Oh, this is horrible. Oh. But I'm trying my best to draw a shape around my rocket here, which is not going well. And at this point, I don't care. I'm just going to finish it off. All right. And so now you see there's this little dotted line that looks like a lot of little small ants marching around the exterior, the contour of my little rocket ship here. And so now if I wanted, I could go to edit and copy. Right? And what it has done is it's only copied what's inside the selection area. Then I can go to my background and go to edit and paste. You see that it's going to paste that area that was selected. Now, remember we talked about layers. I'm not going to go over a whole lot about how layers work again. So Kayla, if you need to understand layers, then come to me. But remember that once I paste something, it's just this floating selection like this. It's not a full layer. So I have to make sure, I'm selecting it here, I want to make sure that once I paste something on here, that I take this and I go down to this little icon right here. I'm going to float over it and see that it says create a new layer and add it to the image. Right? If I click on that, now that layer has been rendered and it's editable. I can do stuff with it. One of the things I can do is I can come over here. Here's the move tool. And actually, no, you know what? I'm going to wait. I'm going to show you how to edit this thing in just a moment because, as you can see, here, remember how to zoom. We're going to use this little button here that looks like a magnifying glass. So I'm going to zoom in on this so you can see just how horrible it looks. All right. So, you see my really jagged edges. Hang on. Yeah, my really jagged, horrible edges. I didn't do a very good job of drawing around that rocket ship. So I'm going to just delete this layer. Right? Just click on this. If I click on the name of the layer, highlight it, I can then come to this little icon right here that says delete this layer. It looks like a little trash can. It's down in this corner. I can click on that and get rid of that layer. Right? Now, remembering how to zoom out. I want to make sure that I've got the zoom tool, the magnifying glass, selected. And I am going to hit Control on my keyboard and hold it down. And then click. Oh, well, I went a little too far. I'll click on the image to zoom out. If I let go of the Control button, I can zoom back in and get this to a decent area. There we go. That works for me. All right, so now we're going to come back to our rocket ship here. I'm going to edit, undo, free select to get rid of that shape I just made. Alright, so another thing, remember, that I can do with the lasso is I can, first off, I'm going to zoom in so I can see better what I'm doing. Let me make my window a little bigger. Grab my lasso tool. And what can be done with the lasso tool as well is if I just click the mouse button, but I don't hold it down, just click it once, you see that it gives me an anchor point. And from this anchor point, now I can pull a line away from it. That I can then anchor somewhere else. And so I can draw myself a shape that goes around the contour of this rocket ship. Now, remember all this over here. I want to make sure that this first button right here is selected to replace the current selection. I do want to make sure that anti-aliasing is on. And for right now, I don't want you to worry about feathered edges. We'll talk about what that means at a later point. Right now, no need. I just want you to learn the tool. So, I can use these anchor points to draw a shape around my rocket ship here. And by the way, if you're wondering why I sound suddenly like my voice has gone down 4 octaves, it's because my sinuses are bugging me like crazy, and so at the moment my throat is not feeling the best, and so as a result I sound like, well, you know, Barry White or something like that. My voice is really deep this morning. So yeah, my apologies if that's distracting at all. Right, so you see I can continue to go around my shape. And I've zoomed in like this so that I can make sure that I'm getting this selection as close as I can to the contour of this object. Oops. Oh, okay. Now, that's something that can happen. Alright, let me explain what just happened there. I accidentally double-clicked. When you double-click, GIMP is going to think that, oh, he must be done, and it's just going to connect that last area that you hit with the very first anchor point. Alright, this is no big deal. Alright, we've got a selection here. We can just expand on this selection. That's not a problem. But what we're going to need to do is click on this little button right here, add to the current selection. Alright. So if something like this happens to you, that's what you should do. Click on add to the current selection. That's going to make it where anything that any more extra shapes that I draw with the lasso tool are just going to connect to the one that I've got already. Alright, I'll show you what I mean. So I'll start over here since this is the area where things went wrong, and I'm just going to continue drawing around. Now, if I hadn't turned that on, my little selection I have up here already would have gone away, and it would have started a new selection. So I don't want that. I want this to stay as part of the one I've already made. Okay. I'm going to go around this wheel, why not? And since this is a video, you can feel free to fast forward through stuff if you need to. It's okay. Alright, so now you see I'm getting back to the area where everything went wrong. Alright, so I'm going to want to make sure that my two selections overlap. So I'm going to put this up above the line that you see how the new line I'm making here is above my old line right there. Alright, and make that connection, and now you see that the entire area is one big selection. Right, so I'm going to get my zoom tool. Remember that you want to hit Control and click to zoom out. Alright, now look, my entire little shape here is selected. Got the little marching ant dotted line going around the image. So I can go again to Edit and Copy. And now that selection has been copied. I can go back to my background, whoops, which I had forgotten I had shrunk. Pull up my background, I can go to Edit and Paste. Remembering again that I need to click on my selection here, on my, on my layer here, and click on this button to make sure that it becomes a new layer. Okay. Then, let me remind you what I just did there. If I double click, it makes the name where it's editable. And I can give it a name that's going to remind me what it is that I use. So I'm going to call it Rocket. That'll let me know that's the Rocket layer. And now it can be edited. Right? So I can do things like, there's this tool here called the Move tool. I can click on that. It's kind of this crosshair with the arrows. I can grab a hold of, by clicking and holding down the button, I can grab a hold of my layer here, and I can move it somewhere else. Right? There's that tool. Another tool that we went over is this one, called the Scale tool. So this one's got a little small square with a big square here. Right? I can click now. Whoops, I actually didn't select the tool. I can click on my shape here. Now, a couple of things here. If I want to... what the Scale tool is going to allow me to do is to make this image larger, this layer, larger or smaller. But I can make it larger or smaller if this little section right here, this little button, it looks like a piece of chain link that is broken. If it's broken like this, that will allow me to grab one of these, all these little squares right here are things that I can grab by clicking on the mouse button and pulling or dragging. It's going to allow me to shrink this thing to where I can sort of squash it, or I could stretch it really tall, something like that. But all of these little guys move independently, so that I can end up making a really big fat rocket ship. Right? But let's say I don't want that. Let's say that what I want is that when I change the size of this thing, I want it to keep its proportions. That's where this comes in handy. I'll turn this chain link on, so that now you see that it's joined. So that now, whenever I change or pull on any of these little things right here, it's going to make adjustments to keep that rocket ship in the same proportions. So no matter what I do, I can't make it a big, fat, or really skinny rocket ship. It's going to stay in those same proportions. So I'm going to make it a little bit smaller is what I'm going to do here. Not that small, come on. That'll do. Right? See how then it made it a little bit smaller for me. Alright, so we went over the Move tool, and we went over the Scale tool. Another that we went over in class is this one, the Rotate tool. And it does exactly what it sounds like. It's going to allow me to rotate this layer. So click on this, and you see how I get that same kind of grid pattern that it was before, but now in the middle there's a circle with a crosshair. Right? That's my rotation point. That's where this thing's going to turn on. Now I can rotate this thing in two ways. One, I can grab it somewhere on this grid, click on it, hold the button down, and turn it. To whatever position I like. Another way I can do is there's this nice little slider right here that's going to give you the angle in degrees. I can slide the slider and notice how it turns my layer as well. Alright, so I'm going to make it sort of like it's flying away from the moon. And boom. Now, remember, if I'm going to grab the move tool, we talked about this in class, that if I'm going to click on this, I want to make sure that I click on the areas where I can actually see the image, not in these clear areas. If I grab there, it's going to accidentally grab the moon and move it instead. I don't want that. So I want to make sure I grab inside the colored pixels of my layer and just move it. Alright? So those are the three extra tools for editing a layer that we went over. We talked about the move tool, we talked about the scale tool, and we talked about the rotate tool. There are other tools up here that you may want to decide to try to play around with, but those are the main ones for editing. Alright? So since I've already gone over that, I'm not going to go over those anymore with any of these other objects that I'm going to, or any of these other images that I'm going to paste onto this. Okay? So keep those in mind. If you need to replay the video and go back over those, you can. But for right now, I'm just going to pull out the other images and talk about some of the other tools for cutting and pasting. Right? So next one I'm going to do here is this robot head. I'm going to open that up in GIMP. Right? And so the next tool that we're going to talk about is what's called in GIMP the fuzzy select tool. It's this little thing right here that looks like, the picture looks like a magic wand. There's a reason for that. In Photoshop, this tool is called the magic wand. So we're going to click on that. What the magic wand tool does is it's going to allow me to click on an area of my image, and it's going to select all of the pixels that are the same color nearby as the pixel that I click on. So if I click on one pixel in the image, the magic wand takes that pixel and it figures out where are other pixels of the same color nearby, and it selects all of them so that I don't have to try to do a sort of a lasso trick. That works nicely when I've got an image like this where there's the image that I want, and then there's all this color that's just one color. Just like this, all this white everywhere. Alright, so again, I'm going to make sure that this button right here is selected. This replace the current selection button. I want to make sure the anti-aliasing is on. Alright, and don't worry about the feathered edges. No need to worry about that yet. Alright, so I'll bring my magic wand and I want to make sure that I'm selecting just this white area. There's a reason for that, and we'll get to it in a moment. So I select this. Right? Notice how it came around and it selected quite a bit of the white area. Almost all of it. It's really only missing a couple of things. One is that this little white area inside the antennas here. So I'm going to, if I want to add to this selection that I've already made, I want to press and hold Shift. Notice how I get that little plus sign now. It means that anything I click on is going to add to this, and this won't go away. So I can click inside here, and I can add that to my selection. I'm also missing this little area right in here. Click on that. It didn't select this little bit of a shadow down here, so I'm going to select that. And there's a little area down here too. Okay, so now all that area around that was white has now been selected. Ooh, I see a little spot right here that's kind of funky. Let me shift and click on that little area. Okay. Now all that white has been selected. So what this is now going to allow me to do is that I can change all that white color into alpha. If you don't remember what alpha means, alpha is just a clear, transparent color. You can see completely through it. That's going to be nice for us because it's going to allow us to turn this into a big transparent area, and then we can just copy this whole image and paste it, and all we'll get is the little robot guy and none of this white. Now the way to do that is I'm going to go to up here at the top, colors, I'm going to scroll down to color to alpha. This checkerboard pattern is how GIMP lets us know that alpha is the color that we've got. Now in our case right here, it's already got white selected. This is the color when it says from color to alpha. If it were some other color, I could go in here and select that color. But for us, we don't have to worry about it. We've already got white selected. And so notice how it's turned all of those white areas into alpha on here. I can hit OK, and voila. Now, I want to make sure that I've got my entire image selected, so I need to go to Select, All, and now you can see that dotted line is marching around the entire image now, right? And look here, you see there's a little spot right there where there's some extra white that I missed. That's no big deal. But other than that, notice how everything else, the white is gone, right? So now I've got the entire thing selected, so I can go to Edit and Copy again. And then I can go to my background and go to Edit and Paste. And see, this is kind of the problematic thing that happens when you haven't rendered that thing into a layer. So I want to make sure I click on my new layer that's been made and click on this little icon right here. Right? And everything's good. Now I'm going to give this a name again by double clicking, and I'm going to call it, oh, I don't know. Just call it box head. Right, that way I'll know where it is. Right, now I'm going to get my move tool and move this so it can be somewhere other than right there in front of the rocket ship. Alright. And I'm not going to deal with shrinking it or rotating it or anything right now because this video is going to get too long otherwise. Alright. Now, the last thing that we talked about. Last thing that we talked about was the clone tool. Right? The clone tool is going to allow me to literally clone something from one image onto another. We'll talk about how to do that here in just a second. Let me get rid of this guy. Close without saving. I also got the rocket ship still open. Okay. Now, next, we're going to go for the robot. Alright, so my little robot here. Hit it with GIMP. Okay, now, what we need to do, first off, is we need to get all this background changed into alpha. Alright? Because otherwise, if we try to clone this robot onto our background over there, we're going to get all this little extra gray stuff that's behind it, and we don't want that. So first off, let's go to the magic wand tool. Alright, I'm gonna press and hold down Shift, and I'm just going to start selecting this background, and everywhere where I see something that wasn't selected, I'm going to click there until I get this entire background around my robot chosen. There we go. Alright, now let's see, I've also got some little areas. Ooh, there's something there that's not been chosen. Alright. A little funky area right there too. Alright, now I can click. I want to make sure that I don't get this little space between his legs, so I want to make sure that that gets erased too. So I'll click in there, and I've also got these little spaces right here and right there that I want to make sure are selected, and that looks good. I think everything's been selected. Oh, whoops, no, hang on. There's a little spot down here that looks funny. Okay. Alright, so now what I can do is delete this area. that I've selected. Now, over here, you see these two little squares of color. There's one that's in front, and there's one that's sort of slightly behind it. This is what's called the foreground and the background color. Essentially, it just means that the background color is that if I delete anything, if I use the eraser tool or what have you, that's what I'm going to get. I'm going to get white in this case. All right, so now, in the image here on my keyboard, I can just press delete. When I press delete, it's going to erase out all of that area that was gray, except for it looks like a little portion down here that I missed, but no big deal. Now I want to go to select all again, so that the whole area is selected. Oops, I'm sorry. Cancel that. I don't want to do that yet. I want to keep all this area selected because first thing is I'm going to go to color and color to alpha because I want to turn all that area into alpha. I've got my white chosen here. It's going to change that to alpha so I can hit OK. And all that area is turned to alpha. If I had unselected that, like I did, if I had gone to select all and then I had done my color to alpha, it would have made my robot kind of see through it. You know, he would have been somewhat transparent. I don't want that. Now I'll go to select all. And now what I'm going to do is we're going to use that clone tool we were talking about. The clone tool. In Photoshop, it's called the clone stamp. That's why it looks like a little stamp. All right, so clone tool, clone stamp, whichever. Click on that. All right, now what that's going to do is it's going to give me a little circle-shaped brush. All right. The one that's chosen right there, you'll see if I click on this, there's lots of different other kinds of brushes I can choose, but this one right here is perfectly fine. I like this one. It's a little small though. You can just barely even see it. So I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. Well, actually quite a bit bigger with the size. Yeah, that seems big enough. Okay, hang on. I didn't mean to touch that. Wonderful. So I got to fix that problem. There we go. All right. So now you'll see that I've got, I hope you can see this on the screen. I've got a circle shape here, right? And if I press Control, that's the button I need to press. There we go. You'll see that I get this little crosshair shape. That lets me know that when I click, I'm going to be able to select the area that I'm on. So I'm going to line this up with just some particular part of the robot. In this case, I'm going to just line it up with his eye there. And I'm going to click. And I'm going to let go of Control. And you'll notice now, if I move away from that area, there's a circle with a little crosshair that stays behind. So that when I go somewhere else with this circle, and I click, it's going to paste it's going to clone, rather, whatever I have clicked on here. All right, so I can now go to my background here. First thing I'm going to need to do is add a new layer, because whatever I do, whatever layer is selected is where this is going to paste to, where this is going to clone to. So I'm going to click on this little shape down here that says Create New Layer. Boom. It's going to pop up this information for my new layer. All of this is perfectly fine. I'm going to just type in a new title for it, which would be robot, since I'm putting in a robot on it. Right, and I want to make sure that that layer is selected. If it's highlighted, it's selected. If I've got anything else highlighted, it's not going to paint my robot in the right spot. Right? So I've still got my clone stamp. So now that I can take that clone stamp and somewhere, wherever I want to start my robot, click the button, click the mouse button and hold it, and I can literally paint my robot onto this layer that I've just made. Right? This may seem to take a little longer than copying and pasting, and it does. But what it can allow you to do, if you want, is, well, look at how it is right now. I haven't finished it just yet, and I've got these little areas that are see-through, kind of ghostly looking. That's something I could play around with if I wanted. I'm not going to this time. I'm going to completely paint the entire robot into place. But that's something I could play around with if I wanted, making certain areas of him slightly transparent, so that he looks a little bit like a ghost, or whatever. I could experiment and see what I can do differently. Now, the thing is, don't let go of the mouse button while you're doing this. Wait until you're completely finished, and there's nothing else left that you need to do here. And I'll show you why in just a moment. Okay, so I'm done with him. But let's imagine I had accidentally at some point let go of the mouse button. I'm going to do that right now. Boom, let go. I had let go, let's say right here at this little area. And then I said, whoops, I didn't mean to let go, and I just clicked again. Well, it's going to start back in the same area where I started before. So I start making another head for my robot right here. Now, maybe in this particular case, that's actually kind of cool, and I kind of like the effect. But that's what will happen if you accidentally let go of the mouse button while you're working. You'll get something like that. I'm going to undo it, though. Okay. Now, there are a few other little things that we went over in class, but for right now, that's where I'm going to stop. Right, so real quick reminder of the tools. Up here, the free select tool, or what we would call the lasso tool in Photoshop. Lasso is what I'll call it more often than not. Here we have what GIMP calls the fuzzy select tool, which is the magic wand tool in Photoshop. Here we have the clone tool, or the clone stamp as it's called in Photoshop. Those are 3 ways of getting images copied and pasted from one source onto another. Then we have ways of editing those layers. Once we have pasted them on here, we can use the move tool in order to move things around. Of course, it wants to be slow today. There we go. I have the scale tool, which will make things larger or smaller. And I have right here the rotate tool, which will allow me to rotate my layer. Okay, those are the basic tools that you really need to get a grasp of for this first assignment that we're going to be working on. So practice these on your own time. Play around with these different methods. Find one in particular that you like. You may find that there's one that you prefer more than others, one that you find a lot easier. That's fine. But experiment with these 3 different tools, the lasso, the magic wand, and the clone stamp, on your own time, because we'll be going over some new things in class on Tuesday. Alright, so I hope that helps everyone. If anyone is still confused after watching this, please, please, please email me, let me know in class, what have you. Just let me know that you're struggling with things, okay? Alright, thanks. Bye-bye.